So we're talking about how we are just reviewing. Here's a literal verse here. How we were reviewing things over and over, and that's the process of learning that we're in now. And that's a good thing. So we're getting very close here, and we've made great progress, and I'm very pleased with the progress that you all have made. So we're on page 384, chapter 34, the Hitpael stem. Somewhat easy to recognize because it has an odd stem marker, the He Tav sort of pattern. The meaning of the Hitpael, paragraph 34.2, used to express an intensive type of action with a reflexive voice. Remember, the Piel was intensive with an active voice, and the Pual is intensive with a passive voice, and the Hitpael then is intensive with a reflexive voice. So if in the Kal, Kadosh means he was holy, or sorry, Kadash means he was holy, then in the Hitpael, Hit Kadesh means he sanctified himself. Alright? Basic meaning. Another meaning, reciprocal. You could actually have, it's kind of like the reflexive meaning, but with more than one person. People doing something to one another. So they looked at each other, as the example he gives there on the bottom of that page. Or iterative. He uses halach as an example in the Hitpael, translating it, he walked back and forth. Iterative means something happens again and again and again and again. I sleep on a queen bed. Well, what does that mean? It means night after night after night after night I'm sleeping on a queen bed. So that's why if you put walk in that kind of iterative sort of form, then he translates it, I walk back and forth. And you can see how you get to that. And then finally, the Hitpael in some instances, he says, is translated just like the cow with simple action with an active voice. So he prayed or he stood firm. All right, so that's the meaning of the Hitpael. Any questions about that? The perfect, well, really, it's somewhat easy because you've always got the Hit, He, Tav, stem marker, and then you have vowel points, Pontok in the first root letter, and Dagish in the second root letter, and that's not unlike the Piel, is it? You see how similar that is to the Piel? Pontok under the first root letter, Dagish in the middle radical, right? Only you have Hit. Alright, so he goes through all of the forms here, the imperative, we'll look at those in the chart in the back. There are a couple of things that you have to be aware of. As you want to you'll notice the participle, instead of having a He, it starts with a maim, because the maim is the marker for the participle. Remember that? So it's mit instead of hit. Now on page 389, paragraph 3412, metaphysis. It has been emphasized that the Hitpael stem is easy to recognize with few exceptions. For the most part, these exceptions are occasioned by a phenomenon known as metaphysis. Metaphysis is a term used to describe the transposition of two contiguous side-by-side consonants in order to smooth out a word's pronunciation. Now, don't you hate it when you read a definition and you got to get out the dictionary just to understand the definition? All right? What that means is if you have a stem whose first root letter is a sibilant, S kind of a sound, sonic, seen, sheen, save, sibilant, then when you put the hit on the front of it, the tav and the sibilant switch places. So if you have satar, instead you get histater, because it sounds better than histater. So you pronounce this better. So you get that switching. Instead of shakar, you get hishtaker. Just got to keep that in mind. We're going to see how the stem marker and the vocabulary form now are kind of mixed up. Mm-hmm. Right? So you're going to unmix it in order to be able to look the word up and see what it means if you're going to look it up in the dictionary. All right, so that's metathesis. Do you understand it? So you just have to bear that in mind with the hit pile. So those relaxing moments that you have to have. All right, now there is also assimilation on the next page, which means that if the first root is basically a dental, said with the teeth, right? Remember when we had Greek? Those of you who had Greek, we had the same sort of things. You know, if you had a sibilant kind of a letter, certain letters combined together. If you have a pi and a sigma, you get a C and some things like that, right? Well, this is similar stuff. And so if you have a zeta, zion, a zion, a dalet, a tate, or a tal, the tate of the hit file performative or prefix will assimilate into the first consonant of the verbal root and remain as a dogish forte. So you get an extra dogish. You basically have a PL-looking form, but it has a hay on the front of it. It's not working for a PL because it has a hay. It's not working for a hifil because it's got the wrong vowel points and doesn't have a heric yod, things like that. Think about assimilation. It starts with a dental. Z. Right? Where do you say with your teeth?
Wouldn't it be he spoke with himself? He talked to himself?
Well, he spoke with somebody. That could be the reflexive idea. They spoke back and forth kind of a thing. And sometimes you may not get the whole reflexive idea. It may just be translated like a cow. For those kinds of reasons. Because vocabulary words, sometimes the meaning of a vocabulary word lends itself one way or another, or just like with the word he spoke. He spoke in the cow means he spoke. He spoke in the hit file probably means maybe conversation, but there's a lot of overlap there, right? So it's not really necessarily the same as the cow, but it could be seen as the same as the cow. See what I mean? And anyway, well, Devar is going to be in the PL normally anyway. Tom Andy was clean. Hit May. He became clean. He got himself clean, maybe, or something like that.
Or he uncleaned them. He uncleaned himself, which would make you clean. Wait, no, that's confusing.
Yeah. Probably used several times in Leviticus.
All right. Hit file, weak verbs, pretty much the same. But page 400, advanced information. You should think about there are other stems. I mean, because different words are going to want to do different things, and sometimes you see a hit-po-lel stem. Well, what does that mean? Hit-po-lel. Well, you're going to have O-A vowel points, and you're going to have a repetition of the second and third root letters. All right. So here we go. So if you have room, you may have a hit-ro-mame. And that's going to be a hit-po-lel. It'll have a meaning similar to the hit-pa-el. Okay. And then the verb chawa. I know you're reading all of this, but that's very interesting. It's kind of a word that has a unique situation in the Bible. It's the word for worship or bow down. Chawa. For many years, scholars understood that differently. Understood it as being from shaka or shachal and no, spelled with a sheen, hate, hey or vav, what have you, and took it as a different thing. But now scholars are taking it as being from chava. And in fact, if you look at an old version of BDB, and at least Holiday, I think even BDB's got to change. But an old version of BDB lists this word under a different vocabulary word, starting with sheen. Because that was previous scholarship. This will list it under chava. We call it a hishtafel, and so you have here have a hey, sheen, tav. You can see the confusion because who's ever seen a 3-letter stem marker, right? But that's what we're arguing. Not me. I don't know if to argue yet for or against it, but that's what's being argued at this point, probably based on cognate languages. Oh, yeah, I just noticed the footnote down there. Some older lexicon sources identify the verbal root as shachar and the stem as hit lel. See? Anyway, you can see a bunch of the forms of the word to worship on the opposite page in your textbook, page 4. All right, next time we'll do the introduction to the Hebrew Bible. That'll be kind of an interesting thing. You have already been in your Bible quite a bit, so a lot of this stuff is going to be stuff that you already are familiar with. Nonetheless, we'll go over some of that stuff just to clarify it and make sure that we've covered all the bases for next time. All right? Let's take a short break from the tape. All right. Let's take our Bibles, Hebrew Bibles, and turn to the book of Proverbs. Let's see if you can find the book of Proverbs. Chapter 1, verse 7. You found it? How'd you find it?
You just kept going.
I use the index.
It's out in Job, isn't it? Because it's part of the writings.
Right. It's right before Ruth. All right. Look at verse 7 then. This is a key verse for Proverbs. And let's see if we can translate this. I think everything is pretty somewhat translated. Sean, read the first part of the ought not.
The translation or the...
well, do both. Pronounce it and then we'll...
Okay. Yerat, Adonai, Roshit, Rat.
Well, that's actually a double up there.
Oh,
I know, it's hard to see in the lawyers early.
Thanks for coming for me. No, I should have caught it. It goes back to the tape. Chekma.
Oh, okay, stop there. Just read up to the give me a translation up to the
Okay.
up to the
Fear of the Lord, Rosh, Chief, and Da'at. I'm trying to think.
Now remember.
Yes, fear of the Lord is the beginning. And I know the verse, so I mean it's just going to...
Yeah, but Bereshit in the beginning, the very first word of the Bible. Here you don't have the bait with it, but Roshit, beginning or head, but here beginning. Da'at, similar to the verb yada.
But to know.
To know. So this is a noun from yada, da'at.
So, okay. The fear of the Lord is the beginning. But I can't, I can pick up the words, but I couldn't break it down the way I ought to be able to. And then da'at, the beginning of knowledge, da'at.
All right. Well, there is no verb here. We have to supply the verb of being. So, yerat is a noun, but it's a feminine noun, and that's in the construct form.
And that's is it from the verb yerat to know to be in awe, to fear to be in awe?
That's right. So, construct form is the fear of Yahweh. Got to supply a verb of being is. Reshit.
And then beginning
of and here that's construct form too, but it doesn't change the form of it. Is the beginning of knowledge. So the fear of the Lord, the fear of Yahweh, is the beginning of knowledge. All right. Now we're in poetry here, right? So as we're doing this, let's see the parallel. Remember, in Hebrew, it's not so much that the words themselves rhyme, but the thoughts rhyme. Okay? So who wants to do the second half of that verse? Tim, you want to try it?
Alright. So that's Chokmah.
Oh, no, wait a minute now. That comma's right there
Oh, Chokmah.
is in a closed, unaccented syllable. So we're going to get Chokmah, right?
Yes. Chokmah, Umusar. I know. Eviling Bazoo.
Okay, good.
So.
I would say Evilim. Actually,
Oh, yeah.
the accents on the, see the accent on the last syllable there, Evilim.
Okay, sure.
All right, so we know Chokmah is what?
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Umusar. There's another noun. Wisdom, and you know the U is what? And on the Umusar word, what's the U part? You know that? Yeah.
I want to say it's some kind of comparative something.
No, it isn't comparative. It's just a little bit different form because of the last word ending as it does. Vowel in the beginning of a word. Okay, and so wisdom and Musar. I don't know if that's a vocabulary word or not, but anybody know what it is?
Let's say instruction.
There's another word. Well, let's pass the vocabulary.
I derived that from the.
Thank you. Thank the Lord for passing vocabulary. But anyway, okay, so wisdom and instruction, Evilim. What's an Evil?
Avil?
I thought that's what Austin Powers wanted to read.
Anybody know what an Evilim is?
It's something plural, right?
It's like fools. So wisdom and instruction fools bazoo. Yes. I don't know if to the Hebrew mind what that sounds like, but it sounds about right to the American mind.
Pretty close.
Bazoo. Okay, so wisdom and instruction fools booze. That's the vocabulary word.
Booze?
Booze.
Is it the definition or the?
No, that's the word. Fools despise. So here we have what it used to be called antithetical, whatever you want to call it today. Here we have a couple of parallels, right? Where the second gives you the opposite of the first, right? So fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge, but wisdom and instruction fools despise. So notice generally that you have an opposite statement, right? See that? Mm-hmm. All right, but within that you have a restatement of something that's similar. So in the first line you have knowledge. You see that? And what's parallel to that in the second line?
Wisdom. No. Wise instruction or just wisdom?
Wise instruction or wisdom and instruction. And so you could be seeing this as what? A hendiatis, right? Possibly. So that's pretty smart. Remember that. That's good. Knowledge in the first is parallel to wisdom and instruction in the second, and fools despise is going to be parallel to what?
Maybe an antithetical kind of way, the fear of Yahweh.
Yeah, the fear of Yahweh is parallel to fools. And I would say is the beginning is parallel to despise. So, but the main thing you see that's parallel here is knowledge is parallel to wisdom and instruction. That's parallel in a synonymous way, because those are the same kinds of things. But the real contrast in this is fear of Yahweh and fools. Right? So if you're thinking about this, and if you're teaching this, and you're preaching this, you're going to want to drive that contrast in that verse. And of course, people want to talk about the fear of Yahweh. Well, what's the fear of Yahweh? That's just respect, isn't it? No. You can actually, I don't have on top of my mind, but you can find verses in the Bible that talk about the need for fear and trembling before God. Trembling gives you the idea of true fear, not just respect. Oh, it's respect, but I'm trembling. Well, why? No, it's fear. It's real fear. And, there's a sermon there. If you don't truly fear God, you are a fool.
You don't know?
You don't. That's right. And I always like to say that anybody who thinks if they stood in the presence of God right now, that they wouldn't be trembling in their boots, afraid, is just fooling themselves. Because when apostles saw angels, they fell down on their face. God is higher than an angel, and I'm lower than an apostle. So I think I would probably wet my pants. I think if I stood right now in the presence of God.
People sometimes say, that I've heard that conversation about people about fearing God. Well, why do you fear God if He's so good? And it's because you fear that which you know is so much more powerful. I trust the Lord, but I fear the Lord. He's so much more. But then there's a different sort of fear that, when John dropped to the ground in Revelations after seeing Christ,
Well, yes. People make a big mistake when they don't think that human beings simultaneously are all over the board, especially with emotions. We feel the same. We feel different things all at once, right? We live with mixed emotions, so. And so, at the same time that we can feel confident before God in Christ, at the very same time we can feel huge fear. I think 1 John indicates that maybe when we're in heaven and everything's all finished and we're just in eternity, that there won't be fear for God at that point. But I'm not sinless at this point.
And how more serious should we take the work of Christ, that we can have a relationship, that we can enter into a holy relationship with the Father? Old Testament times, they never considered it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's really amazing. You look at that having to, Hebrews talks about that the work of the priest now that we, they couldn't do that.
So wisdom, that's a very interesting concept. What is wisdom? Well, by the way, this comes in from Sermon Sunday, Mother's Day, Lady Wisdom from Proverbs. An interesting topic for Mother's Day. But wisdom is really the ability to apply knowledge in such a way that one is able to succeed. It's interesting that the Pentateuch says that the skilled workers that worked on the tabernacle had divinely given wisdom. Wisdom that meant they were able to be skilled craftsmen and come up with beautiful things and do a good job with metal and fabric and things like that. So wisdom is, knowledge doesn't do you a whole lot of good by itself. You've got to be able to apply it in a way that brings success. You see what I mean? And where does wisdom start? What's the beginning of wisdom? Fear of God. And it's kind of interesting to think, that the height of foolishness would be to be successful, very successful under the sun, but having ignored God, that person is ultimately as unsuccessful as you could possibly be. And that's the height of foolishness, to be able to succeed so well under the sun and fail so miserably in eternal terms, isn't it? And it makes us think about education and children. Education that separates God from the educational process. Education that comes from an atheistic perspective, or a godless perspective, or if you could say a purely secular perspective. It might be wise in the sense that you can succeed under the sun, but how wise is it really? And in fact, it really isn't. It demonstrates itself in our country to not be all that wise in many cases in terms of success under the sun. Have you noticed that the stupidest things that you hear come from professors in universities? When I'm watching the news and a professor comes on, I usually have my hands in my head because I'm thinking, I'm going to hear the most stupid things come out of that person's mouth. That a truck driver knows better than that. And since I'm a professor, it makes me think, they're just giving professors a bad name. Seriously, have you ever seen that? So higher education in our country, because it has been so secularized, has become a bastion of pure foolishness in many cases. It's absolutely unbelievable. But when you think about this in terms of our kids, if our kids are being educated, and yet they're being educated in a way that ignores God, how successful are they really going to be in life? They might even make a lot of money, but is that really how we define success? Right? And we don't want our kids to be poor, but as parents, we really need to be thinking about the fact that the beginning place for our children's education and the foundation for all of it is fear of God. And interestingly, not even love God. Those are the greatest commandments. But that's almost the end result of wisdom, isn't it? Where's the starting place of wisdom?
Yeah, that's interesting. As you're reading this, you start thinking okay. Fear, of course, beginning of wisdom. So the beginning point, like sanctification, where do we go from there? Fear, and then what's the natural progression?
One of the most profound little books I've read, and actually I haven't even finished it, is a book written by Andrew Murray called Humility. One of the things that happens when you recognize and when you fear the Lord is humility. You see Him in His rightful place and you in your rightful place. And in a sense, I think you could say that humility, true humility, can be equated with the fear of the Lord in a sense. And that you can't continue, you cannot have wisdom, you cannot have even wise instruction without humility. One of the things Andrew Murray says is it's the foundation of all virtue. You can't have any virtue without humility.
It's really true. It's pretty awesome. All right, let me give you something to think about. I'm going to exercise humility here because I came across something studying a bit today, but I'm not going to come out and say this is the way it is, but I'll give you something to think about. All right, from Proverbs chapter 9 and verse 10. Now this is in a passage that, and all of this is to lead up to get to this passage that is about Lady Wisdom. Verse 1 begins, Chok Mot, wisdom, but that's plural there, right? Wisdom builds her house, and it goes on from there. Right? It's really a great imagery. But verse 10, Techelat Chokmah, Yirat Adonai. What's the first word?
She walks.
No, that's not from halak, because that's hate. But that's a good guess, and just start right. I don't blame you.
Is it halal?
Huh?
Halal?
Halal. Well, etymologically, it's probably related to halal. What does that mean?
To defile? To be defiled?
Uh-huh. So let's look this up as it is in the text and see what holiday is. Yeah, BDB. Right on.
Okay, okay. Hate, Lamed,
321.
okay.
You're looking at BDB as well?
Aye.
Right on, good. I didn't look at, well, I looked at BDB in my computer, but I didn't look at BDB hard copy. So what does holiday say? Yeah, I don't know if you got holiday there.
I do. There's a similar word with different vowels and without the dogish in the lambda.
Well, do you see it at the very first entry on page 389?
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I do.
Now, here it's in a construct form, right, in our text. So we just have a hey at the end of it here.
It says beginning, at the beginning the first time, right at the beginning, at first.
All right, good. What do you have for BDB?
Similar in the beginning, first principle of wisdom.
All right, is that coming under halal?
It is.
What does halal mean?
Actually, it comes under. Well, I mean, it's sort of.
Halal.
I thought it meant praise, but here it says profane. I thought halal was praise.
Halal. With a hey.
This is
That's it. Okay. So.
All right, so to profane. Now, if you look in the theological word book of the Old Testament, they try to explain how this word beginning comes from profane, and they explain that it means something, that it comes from the idea of something like to be unconnected or unobligated from rules or something like that. So, it's a start. What we have here is the word profane is an opposite of the word holy, right? So you have holy and profane used, those two concepts used in juxtaposition. And so if the idea of holiness and profanity has to do with making a particular connection, now I don't know that this is right thinking, but think about it with me, right? So the idea of holiness means something is clearly and unambiguously connected to God, or from God, or directed by God. Right? You follow what I'm saying? The vessels of the tabernacle were holy. I ran across an instruction about priestly garments. If they accidentally got sacrificial blood spilled on them, then they became holy and had to be treated differently. Vessels from the tabernacle were holy and had to be treated differently. Well, what is that? There becomes a chain or a line of connection that is clear from God to something else. In other words, God said, make this tabernacle, and it will be special, it will be set apart. But it's set apart because it has a particular connection to God. Right? And so things that come in contact with the tabernacle also become holy. You grow wheat out in a field and it's profane. You grind it up, bring it to the priest makes bread out of it, and now it becomes the showbread in the tabernacle, and all of a sudden, bam, that bread now is holy. Because now it has a connection to that which has a connection to God.
It reminds me of the book of Haggai, where Haggai's talking about, God's will prepare because they're not building the temple. So get with the program, and that really, unclean hands will make a clean temple. And so, does something unclean become, if something unclean touches something holy, does it become holy? No, but this is different. This is something clean that becomes holy.
Well, yeah, it can work the other way, too, because priests are not allowed to touch a dead person, right? Because that has a different connection, and that connects the priest to that. You see what I mean? So something with a profane connection, priests weren't allowed to marry prostitutes, what have you. So something with a profane connection is not allowed to come in contact, become part of that chain of contact with something that has a holy connection. So something that is, the very first has no connection with anything, right? So it's the beginning. So that and so the way language works, it comes to mean beginning. It comes to not mean anything necessarily directly related to profanity or holiness. It just means beginning. But the concept that it comes from is it's the beginning because it is the first link of a chain. It's unconnected, right? Almost an undefined sort of a thing. You see what I mean? Now, why I'm going into this, you'll see when we get through this verse. But verse 10 then, Tichelah, the beginning of Chokmah, wisdom, is, I gotta add that, Yirat Adonai, is the fear of Yahweh. Now, we go into the other verse first because that was the word from Rosh, meaning head or beginning, like you see in Genesis 1:1, Bereshit, right? So there the beginning of knowledge is Roshit. That's not the same word used here in this verse for beginning. It's the word derived from Chalal. All right, now, guess what comes in the second half of this verse? Vada'at, what's that?
Knowledge.
And knowledge, and that is construct, isn't it? So knowledge of kadoshim.
Things.
Okay, holy things. Or it could be taken as a plural of majesty and referring to God. So knowledge of the Holy One.
Okay.
But maybe he used this. Maybe it ultimately is a plural of majesty and referring to God. But why does he use kadoshim? Because the first thing you're going to think is holy things. And are holy things and the Holy One entirely separate concepts? Right? It's different. It's a different concept, but they're not unrelated concepts, right? So knowledge of the Holy One, Binah, what's that? Understanding or discernment. Okay. So here, instead of having a antithetical parallelism, fear of God, fools, here we have a synonymous parallelism. We're just restating the same thing in a different way. Right? So here we have the beginning of wisdom is the fear of Yahweh. And knowledge of the Holy One, understanding. Notice, I didn't point out what I meant to in that first verse, we had a chiastic structure. Did you notice that? Here, it's a little bit mixed up. Let's see. There's probably a chiastic structure here too, because fear of Yahweh is parallel to knowledge of the Holy One. And you mentioned knowledge of God. If you don't have a fear of God, you don't really have a true knowledge of God, do you? Right? And that supports that very strongly right there. So you have a chiastic structure here again, because you have fear of God parallel to knowledge of the Holy One, and understanding being parallel to the beginning of wisdom. But I wonder if in the mind of the writer, part of the poetry here, part of the subtext here, maybe I'm stretching it. I'm going back to the etymology of the word beginning. It is a different word used in 1:7, though, which is interesting. And I'm looking at subtext here, and stuff's kind of hard to prove. So that's why I'm not saying, hey, this is what this verse means. You need to understand it, right? Even the people on the tape, they need to understand that. But I think it's interesting. Is there a subtext here which is meant to make the Hebrew reader, would a natural Hebrew reader be thinking? Maybe not. But would a natural Hebrew reader be thinking that there is a contrast here between the profane and the holy? I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So maybe we're going from profane to holy, and wisdom takes us there.
So the key word then being the beginning, although it deals in the holy, it's a word that could be the beginning of the profane, and similarly, it would be.
Well, it might be that wisdom becomes the bridge from profanity to holiness.
Or just unholy to holy.
Well, profanity and unholy would be sin, basically.
Mm-hmm. But I think in our culture, if something's profane, it goes beyond neutrality. And I know there's no real neutral between holy and unholy.
Well, unholy isn't a neutral term either. If you want a neutral term, you might think of common.
But you know what I mean as far as this concept of beginning. Because the beginning of this thing isn't necessarily, it's not defiled like.
No, I mean the beginning of wisdom is not a place of defilement, but it makes you think that wisdom reaches to defilement.
Yeah, that's what brings it out.
And brings you toward holiness. Or at least wisdom reaches toward commonness, makes a connection with commonness and pulls it to that which is holy. Or something.
Because I mean, like your analogy of wheat. There's nothing evil necessarily.
There's nothing good or bad about wheat growing in a field. It's
yeah.
not there growing.
But it's definitely not holy until it's beginning has moved past its beginning and it has begun a new process of being used.
It comes in contact with that which is holy.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe wisdom is that which brings us into contact with the Holy One, or something like that. I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of interesting.
Well, I remember one time that reading through that in some class somewhere, that the wisdom in the first several books or chapters of Proverbs parallels Christ in great part. Even though it's feminine of course, but wisdom is, Christ is.
Absolutely. It is kind of interesting. You need to make the point that God presents himself primarily in masculine terms purposefully in the Bible for good reasons. However, God does also present himself in the Bible from time to time in feminine terms. And this is an example of lady wisdom. God is neither male or female, is he? Right? But God does. Humanity in the image of God, a human female, is reflecting something of what God is like. And so God, it would be fitting for God to reveal himself in terms of femininity. Even though his role with us is a masculine role, God's characteristics include feminine characteristics. And lady wisdom is one of those. And the word chesed we've talked about, I think. Have we not talked about the word chesed?
Loving kindness.
Loyal love, loving kindness. Related to the word stork. And what are storks known for? The whole bringing babies thing, the whole storks bringing babies thing grew up because storks had the reputation of being good mothers. And so chesed really is a picture of motherly love. So it talks about the chesed of God. It's talking about God's mother-like attachment to us as His children. So that's a very powerful word. That's another feminine image of God all over the Bible, all over the Old Testament.
Do you think that maybe one of the reasons He does present wisdom as a female is to kind of act as a foil for the immoral woman?
Yes.
It's brought up a lot throughout.
Well, at the very end of this chapter right here, you get
compare
the...
and contrast between the two.
You do, yeah, absolutely. End of chapter 9, you get that foolish woman, boisterous woman. And I think that's there. I think also because there's a sense in which women are meant to play a role in a relationship with a man of grounding and bringing some level of wisdom. In other words, put it in different terms, we have long noticed that women tend to civilize men. And that's a good thing. You know, the fact that men want to conquer is necessary. But the fact that that conquering is moderated or channeled in relationship with a woman brings wisdom to it. And one of the things I said Sunday was that today in our culture we see women, young women, less and less being that force for moderation, being that influence for wisdom in relationship with men. I mean, they're out there competing, trying to be as wild and as foolish as the man is. And what's more foolish for a woman, to enter into a sexual relationship with a man that she's not married to? That plays right into the hands of the man, doesn't it? Isn't it smart for the woman to say, hold on, not until we get this commitment thing together, not until we're in a marriage relationship, because, where's the woman benefit and where's the woman harmed? What the woman benefits in a sexual relationship if she's married is harmed in a sexual relationship if she's not married. So why are women not being the wise ones and saying, no?
Because they've been liberated.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that. And there comes to a large extent from insecurity as well. But, things are not better for women because women are not being the civilizing, wise up kind of influence with men, particularly the men in their lives. And they should be.
And the counterbalance challenge is that men aren't going to sacrifice anymore. That there's a self-centeredness that trumps any sort of sacrifice that a man's supposed to make for his wife. The world has really challenged both roles, and
That's right. A man will be very selfish without being challenged. A man will be very, very selfish. And what's more selfish than for a man to be having sex with a woman and not make a commitment to her? And if a woman will allow that, he'll do that night and day, right? On the other hand, men can balance women out in other ways, right? Women will be, what could you say? Women may sometimes tend to be, I can't think of the word I'm looking for.
Are you having trouble thinking of ways that men are a benefit to women?
Yeah.
Does that constitute a joke?
Yeah.
well, men have an ability to provide.
Women, I found the word. Women may sometimes tend to be, this is on tape, so I have to be very careful, but I think sometimes women might be emotionally indulgent. And maybe it's the role of a man and his logic to balance that. Watch how women parent. Watch how women parent. And that's why, children need a father and a mother. And one of the reasons they need a mother along with a father is because they need that softness that a mom brings and that whole mother bear protecting the children thing. But that whole protecting the children thing needs to be moderated probably by the husband. Saying we're not going to protect them to the point where we enable them, to go to be what they shouldn't be. we need to let hurt come into their life so they're not enabled. You see what I mean? And mom struggles very much with seeing hurt come into their kids' life, a lot more than the husband probably.
Scripture seems to highlight the woman's role in nurturing a child, and the mother's role in nurturing a child, the father's role in disciplining a child. But it does parse it out, but it does, I think.
Well, yeah, those are the naturals. But if a father does not become more nurturing than might be automatic for a man, the kids suffer. And if a woman does not become more of a disciplinarian than might be natural for most women, the kids suffer. So there needs to be, in other words, a man needs to learn from his wife how to react to the children, and a wife needs to learn from her husband how to react to the children. So there needs to be that moderating and one pulling the other more toward the middle and changing in that kind of way. And I'm not sure that that's happening. I'm not sure that women are, grabbing onto the soul of a man and pulling him in the right direction. And I'm not sure that men are grabbing onto the soul of a woman and pulling her in the right direction. I mean, just for me to say that women need to be pulled in the right direction is an offense to somebody, probably. Right? I think there's a lot of wisdom, if I could use the term, in God's design for male and female in parenting and why they need one another. I think there's a reason, and I hate to admit it as a man, but there's probably a reason that we have lady wisdom here, apart from just the literary thing going on with the harlot. There's a reason that the harlot's a woman, and there's a reason that lady wisdom is a woman. What do men want? All we want is bigger tires on our four-wheel drive. Women can bring some sense into some of those things.
Four-wheel drive minivan.
Yeah. Mommy missile, as they're called. This is kind of interesting. All right, let's move on to the book of Ruth. We are on chapter 4, and we are on verse 13, which starts at the bottom of page. No, it doesn't start at the bottom. It starts at the top of page 25. It is that short, isn't it? All right. So, let me give it a go. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Boaz.
Oh, I'm sorry. I looked at the 13 in the margin. The end of 12 I thought was 13, and I'm trying to make sense of it. All right. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. 13. Vayakach Boaz
Et Ruth or Ruth. Vatahi Lo Isha Vayavo Elia. How do you do
Eleha. Yeah, it's kind of pronounced. Sorry.
Vayatim Tain. Oh yeah. Adonai Elohim Lord. Lo.
Lot.
Oh yeah, Lot.
That's accented, right?
Mm-hmm. I was just starting to go through the rules in my head. Closed. Wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yon. Teled. Bain. And Boaz took.
But before you translate that, I must say that I recognize before I started the men and women, I'm generalizing. It doesn't apply to every individual the same or even at all. But generalizations have validity because they apply most of the time. All right. So I'm sure some, I'm sure.
That sounds like a legal clause.
I know.
Purpose for the tape.
It is, exactly. Because somebody can say, my husband's wives and blah, blah, blah. I know, there are men like that. And there are women who are, great disciplinarians, and their children benefit. All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Speaking of fairy children.
10 years from now, who knows who's going to hear that and think, what
the laws will be. Okay, yeah.
Probably go to jail for that. That's right.
Be loud. And
make sure you take this to your wife. It's been here a couple of weeks.
All right, well, good, thank you.
Let me try this again.
Okay, one more time.
And Boaz took Ruth. And they?
She.
Okay.
Okay,
that's it. And she.
From Hayab, right? So she was.
And she was to him his wife, basically. She became his wife.
Right. You have some redundancy here, really low. I mean, you could have had that all in, like Yishai or something, for his wife, but and she was for him for a wife. Literally, but yeah, what you said was, and she was his wife.
Okay. And he went to her.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the Lord coming out right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord gave
Mm-hmm.
to her. I remember looking at this one up. Conception. Pregnancy. And she bore a son.
Awesome. How do you, as far as if I attained a few words? I certainly know that line used it.
I go Yiktol, so then I'd probably say cow.
Okay.
I go cow for 3 minutes, but I'm seeing all those dog shares and I see the Bob.
What's it from?
Yatah.
Huh?
Is it Nathan?
Mm-hmm. And so
it would be imperfect.
why is the dog in the tub? For the meaning. That's right. Very good. All right. So, what's the Bob doing there?
Converse it.
All right.
So, because it's imperfect, and so it's making it past tense.
So, if you want to say cow, imperfect, blah blah blah, which is what cow imperfect, what? What's the blah blah blah?
3 events or 3 MS.
3 MS.
With the reversing Bob.
Because the subject is what?
God, Yahweh.
They call it Bob consecutive, reversing Bob, right? Or Bob conversive.
Yeah.
If you want to do it imperfect plus Bob conversive, that's fine. From now on, I'm going to call it a cow preterite. In other words, I'm going to say and not just me, it doesn't just come from me, but I'm going to say that when we have an imperfect plus a Vav conversive, that equals a preterite. So instead of saying all of that, I'm just going to say cal, P-R-E-T, period, cal preterite. My computer does it even differently than that. I think it says cal consecutive or something like that. I don't know. But it says it's imperfect. And the way I would do it when I was taking beginning Hebrew so long ago, was just to call it a cal preterite, basically. All right, very good. Nice parsing. Good work. All right, who wants to do 14? Okay. Give it a chop.
Okie dokie. I don't remember what that second word is, though. The Hanashim.
Oh, yeah, that's easy.
Is it? It's like chapter 4 or something. Probably. I haven't been there for a while.
Easy you said if I didn't have to look it up by myself.
It looks real familiar.
Well, you know what the ha is, right?
It's the.
Okay.
I know the ending is masculine plural.
Well, it actually isn't a masculine ending. Looks like it, but it's not.
Okay.
Sort of a topic of earlier discussion.
Mm-hmm. Is it Anashim ring a bell?
No.
What do I ask you what the plural of Isha would be?
It's probably what I'm looking at here.
There you go.
Okay. And the women said to her, to Naomi, blessed is Adonai who
Okay, let's parse that word. That's an interesting word right there. Hishbeat. What's it from?
Shabbat.
No. Close though.
Shabbat.
Yes. Meaning what?
To stop or to rest.
All right. Now, what stem is it? So give me the whole parsing of it.
Hifil.
Now, isn't it a good feeling to be able to recognize that's a hifil? That's awesome, isn't it? All right. So hifil.
Perfect.
Perfect. That's another good feeling.
3MS.
3MS from Shabbat.
Shabbat to stop.
But what does it mean in a hifil? Hifil is causal.
Yeah. So he didn't cause you to stop?
Well, not you.
Did not cause to stop either.
Well, that is a very broad translation. Because that really doesn't work in English, cause you to stop.
Yeah.
Cause a redeemer to stop you. But did not, what? What would you say in English?
Didn't leave you hanging?
Well, you could say, didn't leave you without a redeemer.
Okay.
One more word. One more word to go.
Today.
Today. Adnak. That's the middle pause, in the sentence. All right. Go ahead. And
he called.
okay. Now let's parse that.
It's afraid you'd say that.
It's all right. You know this. Just look at what's there. What are you going to look at? Well, you see a vav, and what's it from?
Kara.
Kara. All right. So what's the yod?
Yictal. 3 MS.
Okay.
And
Now all we need to know is the stem.
what's that?
All we need to know is the stem. You got some explaining to do. What do you have to explain?
The valid points
You have something else too.
and doggish.
Okay, you got a doggish in the first radical, and you got a comment under the first radical. You got some explaining to do, Lucy. How do you explain those?
I'm going to blame it on the guttural.
Well, it could be. You could have possibly a lengthening because of the guttural, but would you have what's going to be there if you have a cow and it's a strong verb?
Shavah.
Shavah. You ever see a shavah lengthened to a comment? Answer?
No.
Probably not. You're probably going to have a katef patak or something like that, right? You're probably not going to totally lose the shavah or anything. So that was a good theory while it lasted, but it just didn't last too long. But that doesn't explain the doggish either in the first radical.
Are you guys looking at Vayet Kar, Vayet Kare?
Yep. You were about to have a good feeling. That good feeling is melting away here.
Oh, that melted away a long time ago.
It's really complicated. Record setting.
Does anybody? I bet Kim knows what that is. Do you?
Well,
I do.
isn't a cow with something? I don't know. Those are parts of word.
No.
Something like that.
No, you still have the yod reformative.
Oh.
You do have a default.
It's an nifal.
Didn't I say that?
I didn't hear you. Did you?
Yeah.
I said it too, and then you said, but you still have the yod performative. You just scared me.
Oh, I didn't hear you say nifal.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sorry if I led you astray. There's one other thing you have to explain.
Okay.
The vav before an imperfect looking form like that is typically spelled differently. What does it normally have for a vowel form?
Sure.
A patak.
Oh, okay.
Right? It could be a shirt, but normally it's a patak, and here it's a shavah. In other words, here it's spelled just like either a reversing vowel on a perfect, which is not what we have, or just a plain little and, right? So what that indicates is we don't have a preterite here. And it's not a nifal preterite. What is it?
Can you say that differently? I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I could say it differently by saying what it is, but it's
What is
not a
preterite?
nifal preterite. In other words, this is not an imperfect with a conversive vowel.
Okay.
So it's not an imperfect. It looks like an imperfect, but it's not an imperfect.
I know.
Yeah?
Found it on the chart.
Okay.
Is it adjusted?
It is adjusted. Because it's in kind of a blessing formula, right? Now, after all of that, how do you translate it?
Call.
Yeah, you got to put some other stuff with it.
Adjusted is that the let us? Is that the coordinate form?
Yeah, well, coordinate would be first person. This is third person. And what does nifal mean?
Default makes it passive, right?
Yep. So what's the subject going to be?
Shemu,
Which is?
his name.
Yep. All right. So what's the next word, by the way?
In Israel.
No, that put it together.
His
It's idiomatic, kind of.
No, not very. Well, it is. It is. The meaning of kara is kind of idiomatic, but you can still get it.
let his name be called in Israel.
Exactly. Now, what does that mean? the idiom there is, it can be translated, may his name be famous in Israel, or well known, or whatever. But literally, may his name be called out in Israel. Yahweh's. Alright, that was good. That was kind of fun, wasn't it? Alright, so now hopefully this is a moment for remembering. Nifal. This is typical Nifal. I'm sorry that you said it right off and I got you off of it, but
I didn't say it right off.
Typical Nifal, comments are in the first radical, doggish in the first radical, Nifal. The difference, the reason you don't have the pot talk there, you didn't have to see that different spelling with the Vav to get the jussive part, but that kind of pushes you in that direction. When you see this, his name will be called out in Israel. Well, in the context, may his name be called out in Israel. All right, that was fun. All right, 15. Okay.
And it came to be, and he came to you. This one up. And came to you and returned life, your soul, returned your soul. And sustained.
All right, now hang on a second. Look at the first word. That's obviously from Hayah, right?
Right.
But what is that? And so what is that?
Well, okay. It's a cow, perfect, 3 MS, with a Vav conversive. And so,
in perfect, we call it a reversing Vav.
Okay.
So the reversing Vav makes it perfect.
And imperfect. So,
future.
All right. So, and may it come.
No, it's not just it though.
And
just makes it future.
And he may come to you.
No, may.
Okay.
Future.
He will come to you.
Okay.
And he will come.
Well, it doesn't really mean come either. He will
be to you.
Okay.
And this is the part where,
he will be to you. Now, this word breaks the rule.
Okay.
Lameh Shiv. Okay. So this is from Shuv. What does Shuv mean?
Well, Shuv is went or return.
To turn or return.
And then the maim is a participle.
Maim is a participle.
And the lamed is the construct.
Well, that's why it breaks the rule, because we're not supposed to have a lamed on anything but an infinitive construct if it's a verbal. So now we have a lamed on a participle, so we're breaking the rule. All right. But what kind of participle is it? A maim, we know it's not what stem?
A past tense. Oh, maim. What
stem? We know it's not what stem because it's got a maim on it. Cal can't, because Cal doesn't have a maim on a participle. And what other stem doesn't have a maim on a participle?
The hair nipple.
The nipple. The nipple does not have a maim on the participle. The other participles have maim, so we know it's not Cal or nipple. What is it? Kirikyo.
Nipple.
It's a hifil participle, right? But and it happens to have that long that's stuck onto it against the rules. So if shuv means to return, hifil is what? Causative.
Yeah.
So what is a meshiv?
Well, in return, to return your life because in return. But that's the thing. It's a future tense to begin with.
No. This isn't. Well, he will be for you, and then we kind of have the lamed repeated, just like we did with on the wife thing.
Right.
He will be for you. Now, take this as an attributive participle, used substantively. He will be to you
a redeemer of your life.
One causing to return. Bring him back. How about this? This is fancy language. Restorer. Cause something to return, restore it. So he will be a restorer for you. Of what?
Your nefesh, your life, soul, neck, or throat.
Okay, so he will be for you a restorer of life. Soulish kind of life. Right? As opposed to ruach kind of life. Right? So he's going to be a restorer of life to you. And, this is a weird word. Did you find that this is a poleo? A poleo. So now, because of that, you have all kinds of repetition of. It's actually from cool. Kaf, Shurik, lover. It's a poleo. It basically means and a provider.
He will come to you and restore your life and provide to your old age.
All right, and look at the word old age. Shevat means gray hair, old age. What's it from? Shavat means to rest. It's almost like a word for retirement, right? So he's going to provide for your retirement, basically. All right, good.
Because
sorry,
daughter-in-law,
okay, because your daughter-in-law, don't forget to call on her,
because your daughter-in-law, who you love.
well, who you love, or
Who loves you.
loves you, right?
Yeah, we loves you or loves yours. Also. Okay, yeah. So who loves you and your sons? No. Okay.
If he loves you, and now, Yalatatu.
Okay, your son. But the at part is a feminine. Okay, so yeah, who loves? Okay, no, your son, who?
No son here. This is a verb.
Okay.
Okay, your daughter-in-law who loves you, Yalab.
Okay, and gave birth to your because of they gave birth.
Gave birth, but then you have a 3ms suffix on it. That's what the who is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they gave birth to him.
Mm-hmm. So that the hay turns to a tav to accommodate the suffix.
Okay.
Okay. So it says, because your daughter-in-law who loves you gave birth to him, who she, and now this is referring back to the daughter-in-law. And in English, I'm going to want to do that backwards. She, who
is pleasing to you.
Okay.
All right. Seven. From 7 sons.
Okay, and so is pleasing, or maybe better, good. She who is good to you from 7 sons. So what does that really mean?
That's comparative.
Comparative meaning. So being a comparative, how would you do that?
Better him than 7 sons.
Yes, she is better to you than 7 sons. So that's pretty amazing daughter-in-law. Now, if feminist reading of that passage would say, well, of course.
We need that waiver. Know what I mean by
I didn't say it was wrong.
Yeah, that was a lot of words in that particular one I did not know.
That was a hard verse. That was a hard verse.
And I remember trying to understand the first part, and I didn't. Which I just couldn't figure it out. He may, he will, and the English version didn't read like this.
That was kind of a hard verse. All right, don't we have Kim left?
Mm-hmm. She gets to
So
do
she
that.
can finish up the chapter for us.
Well, last year I guess we're pretty easy.
You can finish up the whole. Why don't you finish up the whole book for us?
Okay.
This is wisdom, that's why.
Lady residents, best student for last.
That's right.
It's fine. Save the best for last.
So, and Naomi took the young child or the boy, and it's a masculine ending, right?
No.
Oh, this is to put or place.
That's right. Don't forget the suffix. That's a suffix on the end there.
So, and she placed him
That's right.
in. And this is one that I had to look up. And she was Einstein.
Where are you going to place a child?
Well, Einstein says bosom.
There you go.
um,
Child rearing according to Einstein.
so in her bosom.
Very good. You saw that, yeah. 3FS on there. All right. What stem is Vatishtehu?
Is it Theo?
No. No, there's no
Oh,
dog.
there's no knowledge, yeah.
Well, of course, the middle letter's gone anyway. But I'd have to have a potok under the first radical for that. Might have a comment because I'm missing the middle letter there.
That's just cow.
Yep.
Make it way more difficult.
Well, you volunteered. I was going to ask you to go to the front too, and you volunteered that, so that's very good. Okay, continue on.
Okay, so she placed him in her bosom, and and she was to him or for him.
Yep.
Now we looked this one up, and it said confirm, and it said nourish, but it also said nurse in
There you
some
go.
instances.
Nurse. Yeah, well, guard even.
One of them came up, it's same thing about faithful, wasn't there? The faithful caretaker.
Yeah, that's right. It comes from that concept of, faithful or true or, loyal. Yeah. So that's
So
right.
she was his nurse.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean she's like grandma taking care of him all the time?
Well, yeah.
Or is that like Ruth, said, handed her over and she raised him?
Well, I think it says nurse, not mother. Yeah, I think she's just very involved in his upbringing, basically. Yeah, Ruth has got to deal with. Ruth has got to be the Proverbs 31 woman for Boaz.
Yeah. Just because you're married doesn't mean you can quit cleaning.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, but be a woman.
Yeah, I know that feel.
Get in.
We need a disclaimer, my friend.
That's right. I just won't mention his name on tape.
Yeah. That's right, his name is Tim Hilger.
All right. All right, keep going, Kim. That was so good.
Okay. And they called to him.
What should Shakan mean? Shakan means a dweller, so these are the dwellers, the lady dwellers. But
The female neighbor, the neighboring women, called to him a name. to call, or lay
more. What is that?
It's from Lamar.
It's an infinitive.
Oh, okay.
Saying.
Okay. And they called his name saying, Yulad, Vain.
The neighbor ladies called out for him a name, saying, Yulad? What is Yulad? From Yalad.
From Yulad.
It's a cow.
Bear.
It's a cow. What's going to start with a kibbutz under the first radical?
That is a cow?
Yeah.
In a church.
Oh dear. Remember, could be defective spelling for a shirt.
Ooh, that's supposed to be a hint.
Yeah, I couldn't figure it out.
Or is it just me thinking that looks like a cow passive participle? There's a shirt that comes second.
How is it not cool?
Yeah. Well, you know something? Adam, I believe you're right. And here's why I think you're right, because there's a doggish in the low bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a pool.
So if it's an intensive
And
passive,
pool is passive.
since it gave birth, she pushed out.
Thank you. Okay,
Well,
I led you straight.
when we looked it up,
Let's back up that tape. Correct. No, I'm teasing.
okay. We should every time we make a mistake, we should edit it out. When we looked it up in the computer program, because we tried to figure out, and it looked like pool, and it came up with something different. What is it?
It said it was still a cow, but
This
can you explain? Yeah.
Well, this might be an example of where the computer has it wrong, because actually, my computer didn't say pool there.
It says truly cow passive, which is the same as pool, isn't it? Isn't pool just passive?
Computer.
I think it might be a computer error, to be honest.
Yulad Bain Manawi is just the son of
Probably is
Naomi.
That's right. The son is born to Naomi. So this, maybe there's a mistake on the.
Maybe they're based off a different grammar than this.
The Acadian or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Who knows? Why not call it a pool? Makes sense to me. So yeah, good. All right, continue on there, Kim.
So son was born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He fathered Jesse, or he was the father of Jesse, the father of David, or something like that.
He the father of Jesse, the father of David.
And it goes down.
Who was? I guess you could say he who was the funny guy has something.
Why don't you say it's
Otherwise, you end up with a bonding to him.
What is
Sorry, I was just reading Cosby speeches today.
the son to Naomi, though? Why is the son to Naomi?
Well, Naomi. The son was born to Naomi. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not asking about the grammar. You're asking about why does it say a son to Naomi
Rather than son to Ruth.
Good point. Well, it's because she finds her redemption now. She no longer has to maybe not so much the shame of childlessness, but it is because there's no one to take care of her.
And she's got an heir now too.
She has an heir, and so even though it isn't literally a son, there's something that you have to realize about the terms like son and father, and realize this as we go through these genealogies, because we're skipping generations. That the concept son is not always, strictly speaking, son, the next generation, and father is not necessarily, strictly speaking, next generation. And so here, it is a blood relative. Well, I guess it's a blood relative of Naomi because of the Goel being a blood relative of Naomi. But anyway, he is at least acting as a descendant of Naomi, and therefore will take care of her in her old age and all those sorts of things. So that is a very striking feature of the text, by the way. I'm glad you brought that up. That it's not just a son to Ruth, but it ends up being a descendant of Naomi, a son to Naomi. And that's almost unexpected. Well, it kind of is unexpected right there. It just
Makes him Jewish, not old.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I think it took up the Gentile.
well, and maybe that's part of it.
But Matthew puts it back in. Someone does, right? I'm trying to think in one of the genealogies. It's
Yeah,
for the Ruth again.
sure. Maybe it's part of it, to show his Jewish descendancy, but it really drives home to me very powerfully the purpose and value of the kinsman redeemer. Because you might think, well, now Ruth's got a husband, she's rich, blah blah blah, right? But the focus here is on what happened for Naomi, and the neighbor women are going, okay, Naomi, now you've been redeemed in a sense. God's not left you without a redeemer, and that's very interesting. If you see Naomi as representing the people of Israel, typologically, with Christ. So because of Jesus, God did not leave Israel without a redeemer.
Any messages for next week?